Hello B Block, and welcome to the written portion of the ethics project. Formulated by the late Philippa Foot in 1967, the famous trolley problem has since been endlessly picked apart and argued over by moral philosophers. It's even been reformulated apart from the classic. The trolley problem also comes in fat man, loop, transplant, and hammock varieties. Yet, in spite of all the fascinating analysis, there still isn't any good consensus on what the right thing is to do. And not only do philosophers disagree over what to do, a significant number of them just aren't sure. In a 2009 survey of mostly professional philosophers, 34.8% of the respondents indicated some degree of uncertainty over the right answer. And this comes from a very interesting article entitled, "Is Applied Ethics Applicable Enough? Acting and Hedging Under Moral Uncertainty" by Grace Bowie. And you can look it up on the internet. It's easy enough to find. And essentially, this is what we're asking you to do. We're asking you to take your ethical question and try to determine whether or not you feel that the easy way or the hard way is the most ethical path, and to take the most interesting ethical lens from either the Harvard videos that you watched, or one of the orals that you heard in class, or perhaps even your own oral. The picture in the center of the slide says, morality is doing what's right regardless of what you're told. Obedience is doing what is told regardless of what is right. So this is the timeline that we'd like you to follow. If you're online at home, perhaps it would be helpful if you jotted down this timeline or took a picture of it so that you know exactly what to do when, especially if you have load shedding or Wi-Fi issues. On Monday in class, we'll consider the topic, discuss and revise argumentative essays, and this video will cover all of that. On Tuesday, there is no lesson. On Wednesday, you plan your essay. On Thursday, write the essay and the double lesson, and then on Friday, of course, holidays begin, so you'll submit. So on Wednesday, when you're planning, perhaps you might want to think about questions that you have for your teacher, any issues that you might encounter. That'll be a good day to reach out and find out what you might need help with. So the quote that we've taken for you to consider is by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. "Even the most rational approach to ethics is defenseless if there isn't the will to do what is right." I'm going to read that again. "Even the most rational approach to ethics is defenseless if there isn't the will to do what is right." So the question that it's asking you, if you take a highlighter and just circle the word rational, and then circle defenseless, and then underline what is right. These are the words that you need to focus on in this question. Does one have to be purely rational? Or is this entirely defenseless if you're not doing what is right? Now you can agree with this. You can say this is entirely valid, I agree, and that can be how you argue, and you can use your ethical lens to argue that. Or you can decide that actually the will to do what is right is less important than what is rational. And that is entirely up to you. This is an argumentative essay, and you need to determine how you're going to argue your point. So the topic is, argue the validity of the statement above to your chosen ethical question. You must demonstrate an understanding of ethical theory in your answer. Your essay should be approximately 600 words, but no word count is necessary. So it'll all depend on what you're doing. Perhaps you're interested in artificial intelligence, perhaps you're interested in gene selection, it's really, or sport, ethics in sport, it's really entirely up to you. You then need to go through the notes for writing an argumentative essay. An argumentative essay discusses a contentious issue with a high degree of certainty, supporting one particular point of view in favor of others. As you do in a lit essay, state your thesis and give a pathway, the topics you will cover in the ensuing paragraphs. Each topic gets its own paragraph, and your pathway will just summarize the 3 or 4 topics that you would like to cover. So each paragraph deals with a particular aspect that supports your viewpoint. So don't put in anything in your pathway or in a paragraph that actually doesn't make the point you're trying to make. Do not present the merits of the other viewpoints, as this will undermine your argument. It might be helpful to think of it like you would a science experiment. You present your aim in the form of a thesis statement, determine your hypothesis, in other words, where you believe your discussion will take you, and then set out the procedure or the topics you will cover in your discussion. Each topic gets its own paragraph, as I've said before, and in the conclusion, you determine what the evidence you presented proves or determines in the form of a restated thesis statement that sums up your discussion one way or another. So you don't write the thesis statement out again verbatim. You restate it, showing how you have proven what you set out to prove. The usual rules apply. Present tense, no contractions, no slang, no colloquial language. Pay attention to structure. Plan very carefully. We want to see evidence of this in the writing tab in your OneNote class notebooks. And you must quote or cite properly. And many of you are familiar with Peel, and it's perfectly acceptable to continue to use the point, evidence, explain, link model. But you might also find ICE to be quite a helpful acronym. You introduce your quotation either by introducing the topic sentence for that paragraph. So, for example, the fact that teenagers today are sophisticated social networkers has changed the way that they process information. In the same paragraph, you would then cite your evidence. You cite in your next sentence by synthesizing your quote in the sentence. It does not float free. Have a look at the sentence and note that the quote is embedded in the sentence. Professor Know-it-all believes that, open quote, the rise of Facebook and other social media platforms have made conventional pen and paper methods of conveying information to the public almost completely redundant. Close quotes, open brackets, cite your source, the name of the author, Know-it-all, comma, 2014 if it's a magazine article or any other kind of online article. But if it's a book, you would then also have comma and the page number, P.4 for page 4, before you close the quote, the brackets. You then explain how this quote makes the point you're trying to make or dispute it. You might say, despite this opinion, many journalists and teachers believe there's still a place for pen and paper transmission and reception of information. So you might like the ICE method. The most important thing that I wanted to show you on this slide is how to embed a quote. Many of you are still putting a full stop before you open your quotation marks and quote, and then full stop and close your quotation marks. And you really need to be more sophisticated than this at this level and embed your quotes. I love this Calvin and Hobbes. I'm not going to read it out to you, but essentially it shows that the problem with just looking out for yourself often lands up meaning that other people will treat you the same way that you treat them. And so this is valid for your ethical question. Are you going to be a purely Machiavellian, are you going to present a purely Machiavellian argument, or are you going to have a more generous moral perspective? And it's entirely up to you. You're not going to be marked down, but what we are looking for is rigor. In other words, we need to see that you've researched and that you can substantiate your points of view. In fact, if you wanted to have fun, you might deliberately choose a contentious stance. At the end of the process, we'd like you to come back and take a look at this checklist. We want to make sure you've stated your position clearly, that you've structured your essay correctly, that it's formal, that you've written enough to make a good case, that you've embedded your quotes, as I've stressed a few times, and that you've submitted everything in a new tab in your class notebook under the writing tab. We need to see your notes, planning, and the final essay. And you can scribble in your class notebook using the draw function, using your mouse. You can type, you can write, or you can use a stylus or your finger if you're using your phone or a tablet. And now the only thing left to do is to get started. And the way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. So we hope that you enjoy this written part of the Practice CAT module. And we believe that this is going to put you in a very strong position for the film study task at the end of the year and the CAT in matric next year.